I was living in the university hostel during my studies at University Brunei Darussalam, UBD. At first, everything was very normal, and nothing strange happened during the first 2 months. But in the third month, I began to feel something odd inside my room. It was a negative sensation, a gloomy energy, as if the room was suffocating me. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking that maybe I was overthinking because of exhaustion from staying up late to meet deadlines. However, things began to get stranger. One morning, I woke up to find bruises on my thigh and chest. I couldn't remember hitting anything or having an accident. I brushed it off again, trying to convince myself that maybe I had accidentally hurt myself without realizing it. But as the days went by, I kept waking up with new bruises of different sizes in different parts of my body. The bruises got worse, covering my back and thighs, as if someone had been beating me while I slept. On the 5th night, while I was preparing to sleep, I heard a knock on my door. I got up to open it, but there was no one there. I closed the door and returned to my bed. That's when things started to escalate. My desk chair moved on its own. At first, it was a small movement, as if someone was slowly pushing it. I stared at the chair, and before I could process what was happening, it moved violently and suddenly. I was terrified beyond words, so I ran out of my room and knocked on one of my friend's door. When she opened it, I was trembling as I explained everything to her. I begged her to come with me to my room to get my phone and pillow because I was too scared to go back alone. Fortunately, my friend was understanding and kind enough to let me sleep in her room for 3 days. After that, I requested a room transfer. When I told my family what had happened, they gave me holy water to spray in the corners of the room. Since then, nothing strange has happened. Even the weird bruises I kept waking up with completely disappeared, as if nothing ever happened.
I'm telling you this story because, honestly, I don't want to remember it, but I also don't want to forget. Last fall, I took on what ended up being my last case as a paranormal investigator. It was at Carter House, a place with a dark history and plenty of rumors around it. People in the area said the place wasn't just haunted, it was dangerous. I thought they were exaggerating. After all, I'd done this for years and heard my fair share of ghost stories. Carter House was a big 3-story house out in the middle of nowhere, abandoned for decades. Most people wouldn't have even noticed it driving by, but locals had kept the stories alive. Supposedly, several people had died there, and over the years it had served as a boarding house, a family home, and even a temporary hospital for a bit. The last people to own it supposedly left after one of their kids went missing in the house. No one ever found the child. When I arrived, the place looked as creepy as you'd expect. It was covered in vines with broken windows and walls that seemed to sag. I'd come prepared with my usual gear, a flashlight, an EVP recorder, and some basic sensors. I set up in the front room where people said they'd heard voices or seen shadows. Nothing happened at first. Just the usual creaks and drafts you get in old buildings. But around midnight, things changed. I heard 3 knocks coming from the 2nd floor. It was rhythmic, like someone was doing it on purpose. I figured it was probably an animal or just the house settling, but it kept going. 3 knocks, pause, then 3 more. That's when I started to get an uneasy feeling, because I remembered reading that 3 knocks were supposed to be a kind of mocking sign in paranormal circles. Almost like a twisted joke. I took my flashlight and went upstairs to investigate. The knocking was coming from one of the back rooms. As soon as I reached the door, my flashlight started flickering, and then it just went out. The room was pitch black. I tried to turn the flashlight back on, but it was dead. The batteries were brand new, and I had checked everything before I came. I was standing there in complete darkness, and I felt this heavy, cold feeling, like something was right there with me. Then, I heard breathing. It was slow and shallow, but it was definitely there, just a few feet away. I called out, "Is someone here?" and then waited. For a few seconds, there was just silence. Then, in the faintest voice, I heard a whisper, Get out." The voice was so close, next to my right shoulder. I could almost feel the air move and had the feeling like someone might ever grab me from behind. It literally sent chills down my spine. The moment was like I could have had a heart attack if I turned around to look what was slightly touching me from behind. Literally anyhow, tried to stay calm and took out my EVP recorder, hoping I could capture something. But before I could even ask another question, the door behind me slammed shut. I don't know if it was fear or instinct, but I felt an intense urge to leave immediately. I turned to open the door and it felt like something grabbed my wrist, cold, tight, and so real that I could feel pressure on my skin. I broke free and ran down the stairs, but the whole time I could feel this presence following me. It was almost like the house was alive, like it was pushing me out. I got outside, jumped into my car, and drove off. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, I looked down at my wrist and saw dark marks, fingerprints, bruises from something that had grabbed me. I didn't know what to make of it. I hadn't tripped. I hadn't hit anything. And yet here were the marks as clear as day. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of what had happened. I listened back to the EVP recording, and while most of it was just static, there was a faint whisper caught on tape. "You shouldn't be here." That was it. No other sound, no other sign. Just that faint, unsettling message. It was like whatever was there knew I was intruding and wanted to make sure I didn't come back. I never went back for my gear, and I haven't been on an investigation since. That night at Carter House changed everything for me. Some places, I believe, hold on to things, dark things that don't let go. And once you've experienced it, there's no going back to the way things were. My name is Michael, and I'm a 14-year-old boy who lives with my aunt in the countryside. Now out here we have no neighbors. The closest place to my house is about 8 miles away. I always loved living out here because I've always liked the seclusion, and the road we live by is always dead at night, which makes for good sleep. Now, my aunt is always working the night shift, so this means I would be home alone pretty much every night. Long story short, I came home from school on a relatively crappy day, thunderstorms and rain all day and all night, and spent my day playing video games and Snapchatting my friends. At about 9 o'clock, my aunt came upstairs and told me she was heading off to her job. I was always fine with this because I liked being home alone. I had full range of the house and could play loud music all I wanted. Who wouldn't love it? At about 11 o'clock, I had started feeling tired and laid down to watch some YouTube and go to sleep. And soon enough, I did. I woke up at some odd hour of the night to somebody knocking on the door. I sat up and muttered, "What the hell?" I thought my aunt had got home from the night shift and reluctantly went to go answer the door, and out of habit, checked the window beside the door to make sure it was her, but there was nobody there. I thought to myself, probably some stupid kids knocking on my door and running away, and I dismissed it at that and went back into my room. I checked my phone to realize it was 3 a.m., and the thought of teenagers ding-dong ditching my home was suddenly out of the question, given that it was a Wednesday. And I basically lived in the middle of nowhere. Just as I was thinking, I heard a bang coming from the basement. I jumped and tried to make up an excuse like a noise of the thunderstorm to calm me down. We always kept our basement door locked anyway, out of my aunt's paranoia and fear of someone breaking in. That's when I heard footsteps slowly creaking up the old wooden stairs in my basement. Frozen with fear, I grabbed my phone and called 911. The operator told me to go to an upstairs room in the house and grab a weapon to defend myself. But there was no way I was going to grab a knife from the kitchen, especially when I heard the door being slammed and quickly realized that someone was trying to bust it down. I jumped from my bed and closed my door quietly and hid in my closet like the 911 operator had told me to do. This was easily the scariest moment of my life, but suddenly, the banging stopped. But what comes next will haunt me for my whole life. Whoever it was screamed at the top of their lungs, but it wasn't a normal scream. It was an insane and disgruntled scream. And then, I heard the basement door collapse. Now he was full out screaming as he sprinted up the stairs. He went through all the rooms down the upstairs hallway, still screaming. until he reached mine. My door unfortunately didn't have a lock on it, and when I heard him open my door, I was paralyzed with fear. I could see him through the shades of my closet. He was still screaming, looking all over my room, even under my bed. But then after trying to hold my breath for too long, I let out a puff of air. He perked up, looked straight at my closet, and slowly walked towards it, no longer screaming. I couldn't even breathe at the moment, especially when he just stopped right in front of the closet door. I could see him through the closet, and he had the biggest smile I had ever seen. As soon as he slowly reached for the closet doorknob, there was a loud bang at the door and somebody yelling, "Police!" The man quickly ran and tried to run out my window, but failed. As soon as I saw the police tackle him, I instantly ran out of the closet and outside, now realizing that was a stupid move on my part. After a couple of minutes, I saw the police bring the man out in cuffs, but on the way to the car, he stared at me with the biggest smile and the craziest eyes I had ever seen. Watching him ride away with the police was the greatest moment of my life. But what still haunts me today is the face he made as he was standing in front of my closet door ready to do something horrible.